Government of Jamaica Staff Orders, Chapter 11, Authority. That's 11.1. So we're talking about travel and subsistence here. Authority. The authority for the administration of government's traveling and subsistence policy, including the setting of rates, is vested in the ministry with responsibility for the public service. Purpose. Traveling and subsistence allowances are granted to meet expenses actually incurred in the performance of official duties. Holders of posts requiring travel should neither be out of pocket nor should they derive financial benefit beyond their direct costs. Yes, that means you're paid traveling only if the traveling includes your official duties, not for any personal reasons. And it should not be that you use more money than reasonably necessary, right? And it shouldn't be a case where you benefit financially otherwise outside of your job that you're doing. All right, traveling allowances, that's 11.3. Eligibility. When functions of a post include travel as an essential requirement, the holder of the post may, subject to the applicable provisions, be eligible for either one or a combination of traveling allowances. Upkeep allowance. When functions of a post make it essential for the holder to possess his or her own means of transport, you have your own car, your own vehicle, an allowance for its upkeep may be paid. In addition, he or she may be paid for the actual distance in kilometers at the rate prescribed. Commuted allowance. In cases where it may be expedient and desirable that the officer possess his or her own means of transport, he or she may be granted a contribution towards the upkeep and running expenses in the form of commuted traveling allowance. In that case, it may be that you take a bus or a taxi. In addition, he or she will be paid for the actual distance in kilometers for travel outside a radius of 10 kilometers from his or her own place of work. So your distance starts at 10 kilometers away from your office, your place of work. Allowance in lieu. An officer holding a post to which a motor car upkeep or commuted allowance is attached, but who has no motor car, may be eligible for allowance at the prescribed rate. So you hold the post and the post attaches an allowance for a car, but you don't have a car, right? You may be eligible still for an allowance at the prescribed rate. Well, that allowance would cover your bus and taxi fares. An officer in receipt of this allowance will not be eligible for reimbursement of taxi fares or bus fares. So you will get the allowance, but you can't go and say you want back your taxi fare or your bus fare. Right, casual allowance. And now, when an officer to whom neither an upkeep allowance nor a commuted allowance has been granted uses his own means of transport while traveling in the performance of duties, he or she will be paid fully for the actual distance in kilometers at the rate prescribed. Now, incidental allowance. An officer who is not in receipt of traveling allowance and who uses the service of a taxi in performance of his or her duties may be refunded expenses occurred provided the rates are fair. So it should be a fair rate. It should not be extremely expensive. Alternate traveling allowance. Permanent secretaries / heads of departments may approve the reimbursement of the cost of hiring alternate transportation for public officers who are eligible for an upkeep of or a commuted allowance and whose personal motor vehicle is out of service. Okay, your car is in the garage being worked on, you may get alternate allowance. Right. The period of entitlement will be after 5 working days of the loss of use of the personal vehicle, and the maximum period of the allowance shall not exceed 25 working days. Okay. So if your car is in the garage today, you have to wait 5 days before you get the alternate allowance. And you will not get the alternate allowance beyond 25 working days. Okay, that's alternate traveling allowance. Now, in exceptional circumstances, the permanent secretaries / heads of department may authorize the allowance for a further period, but not exceeding an additional 25 working days. That's in exceptional circumstances. Let's look at fully maintained motor vehicle. Certain categories of public officers are entitled to fully maintained motor vehicles as determined by the motor vehicle policy. An officer may elect to operate his or her own vehicle and will be eligible for the prescribed allowance. An officer may elect to operate or partially main. Alright, let's read that again. An officer may elect to operate a partially maintained vehicle and will be eligible for a percentage of the allowance prescribed. Partially maintained vehicle. I guess maybe they are co-owners along with somebody else, and the other person pay part of the maintenance. Probably that's the case, right? It could be other cases too. Officers to whom government vehicles are assigned on a full-time basis should not be paid a traveling allowance. So the vehicle you're driving is a government vehicle. You're not paid on a traveling allowance for that vehicle. Motor vehicle purchase allowance advance. Officers who are eligible for an upkeep or a commuted allowance may subject to the conditions specified in the financial instructions, be considered for an advance from public funds to assist with the acquisition of a motor vehicle. Okay. Payment of traveling claims. We'll look at that in a different video.